Make sure you don't click leave meeting. I almost did it.
I did that once before.
There you go. And we're on the same Zoom for both meetings, correct? Okay, so we don't have to leave. Everybody here, ready to go? We're on Facebook now. All right. I will call the Board of Alderman work session to order. First thing on the agenda is the FY21 budget review. Mr. Larson is here to provide us all the fun facts and PowerPoints and all the goodness. So take it away when you're ready.
Okay. Make sure I get this full screen here. So here. Is that full screen or is it just black?
No, it's it's not the full screen, it's the preview screen, the budget with the slides beside it. So yeah, we're not in slideshow, but you are full screen as you can get.
I think second here.
Now we're on your blue desktop.
There we go. How's that?
Good. Well, it's your preview side. Is it that the one you wanted?
No.
Recap on one side. Okay.
Just want to make sure it gets to be full screen. I don't think is it there yet?
Just go to display. Yeah, it's good. We're good. You can go forward.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's a pleasure tonight to bring you the fiscal year 21 budget recap. We'll go through this data here, looking at data as of October 31st, 2021, and it's our 2021 fiscal year budget. Start by looking at the general fund. We've had nice winter banners as a nice touch to the downtown streetscape project that we just finished here in 2021. We started the fiscal year 2021 with an original budget of about $3.1 million in the general fund. We actually started above our budgeted beginning cash balance, which put us out on a good note by about $400,000. That original budget for revenues was slated at 4.6. And we had forecasted about 5.2 coming down the home stretch. And we actually finished even better than that. So from a revenue standpoint, we really performed very well in the general fund this year and finished at 5.4 million. The difference between that and the budget amount there in green of almost $800,000. On the expenditure side, we had similar success in the general fund. We had an original budget of about 5.6. We were forecasting to spend about 5.3, and that's about right where we ended up for the year. We had some savings in some various department operational and personnel line items, which I'll touch upon a little bit later. On the fund balance side, we had budgeted to draw down fund balance to 2.2, but because of those additional revenues and expenditure savings, we finished the year with 3.7. I put a note down there for the board. We have a set of financial policies for our funds. One of our goals is to maintain a reserve level in the general fund at 40% of the operational expenditures, actual expenditures. That 40% is about 2.1 million, so we're still very comfortable on the reserve level.
We're actually, if you look at that, we're budget versus in a year, we're over 100% reserve, right?
Yeah.
We spent 3.5 and we ended up with 3.7 left, so.
Right. Yeah,
so it's pretty healthy.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we roll into fiscal year 22, our forecast became our budget number. And because we finished a little bit better at the end of 21, we're projecting to be about 260,000 over our budget for this year. Revenues and expenses set to budget and forecast at the moment. So we'll continue to monitor that. You can see we are planning to draw down fund balance from 3.7 to 2.9. We have a lot of one-time expenditures and finishing up projects, so we'll plan to do that this year. I'll talk about some major revenue highlights here briefly. The 1% city sales tax has continued to perform well and has had good growth over these past 3 years. You can see we've gone from about 1.1 to about 1.2, and we've continued to grow from there and have met our budget each year. We also see strong online activity, consumer activity through our city use tax. We've seen this really grow over the past 3 years with a lot of increased activity through online purchases, deliveries, and that sorts of thing. You can see we've had 40% growth there at the bottom from 19 to 20, and then 34% growth from 20 to 21 is indicated there and in the orange bars. Each year we've also exceeded our budgeted amount. And then the last major revenue I'll take a look at here for you is the property tax. We've seen consistent growth of about $40,000 each year, from $855 to $890 to $930. And that's been about 4.5% growth each year. And for next year, we saw increased gains in our assessed valuation. So I'll expect to see a pretty consistent pattern, probably another 4 to 5% next year. I'm going to touch upon these key object codes. Other than the ones we just looked at, we had success in other revenues, including building permits. It was a successful year in bringing those in at $280,000, about $114,000 above the budget. The campground continued to be a success this year with a lot of campers and people staying the night there. Brought in $265,000 there with a budget of about $154,000. So those were two real bright spots in our revenue lines. On the expenditure side, we did have vacancy savings in the police department, had various positions open during the year. We also had turnover in our assistant administrator position and some vacancy there. We had some unfinished projects in the streets department that will continue to finish up this year. We also had some increased expenditures in parks with maintenance and repairs. So overall, general fund performed really well this year. I'm really pleased with the performance, especially on the revenue side.
Even one real quick, could you just go back real quick? Hey,
Sure.
Jack, on the building permits, is that from commercial mostly, that increase? Or combination of?
No, it's mainly commercial. Yes.
Okay.
Mainly commercial stuff.
That's all.
Before we leave the general fund, I just want to introduce a few considerations for the board. If you remember back to the chart where we saw the $260,000 better than projection than what we had budgeted, we do have some considerations for that money and how it to be spent. One of the first things, and Cynthia and I discussed this today, is we'll have an upcoming presentation by McGrath Consulting to provide the board with an overview of the compensation and classification study. I think that presentation will include a costing number and amount to implement the study recommendations. So a portion of that 260 that we're doing better already out of the gate in fiscal year 22 would be impacted through the costing for that study. Some other things that we're just watching here in finance is the performance of the local economy. We've seen inflated consumer prices. And so that does mean increased expenditures for the operational budgets for the departments. So we're watching that closely to make sure that we hit our budgets in fiscal year 22. The prices have really increased on everyday goods and services. On the flip side, that's bolstered consumer spending and it's bolstered sales taxes. So there's a positive and a negative to that. And the other considerations for this year is the future staffing and infrastructure needs we have, especially with the Parks and Public Works building. We're doing engineering on for and design, and the police facility, which we'll need to find a future revenue stream for that. I just wanted to mention there that this budget was built with the assumption of using that fund balance, drawing down that 3.7 to 2.9. So we are lowering it. We're still maintaining our reserves, but I think we're making the right investments. We're using it strategically. Any other questions from the board on the general fund?
Stephen, have you, for the inflation numbers, I mean, we hear nationally 6%. I mean, and not to get into the weeds on this, but in finance, in being on the finance committee and talking about this in the past, I think it's come to light that we definitely need to pay closer attention. Is there a percentage that you are comfortable with in presenting to the board as we move forward? I mean, do you feel like we'll have to make any adjustments because of that inflation?
I'll answer a little bit of that. I think we're going to find out pretty soon because we're putting stuff out to bid. On the next, the agenda for regular session, we've got a few things that we're awarding, but we're also getting ready to put some stuff out to bid, right? The UV lights, Chuck, were those much more expensive? I mean, we put the other ones we put in, 10 years ago or so? Did those double? I mean, did those go up significantly in price in the last couple of years?
Well, a little bit, but the $40,000 we had budgeted was what we got quoted last year. And, then we put it in the budget for 22. It wasn't in the 21 budget. Same thing with the Menke project. He mentioned to us that he might be able to do that for less than 40, and his bid's 47. So that's due to the prices going up just this last year because of COVID.
And I know we've been contacted by electricians, plumbers, and pretty much, we're doing work at Smith's Fork, we're doing work at other places, and they've all expressed those concerns. So Dan, we don't have a percentage number, but as we put this stuff out to bid, I think we're going to have to expect potentially higher prices than we originally budgeted.
That's a fair statement there. Absolutely. I just think about fuel too. I know we discussed this and we were kind of putting the budget together, and I think we were trying to be a little more than above conservative, but it seems like everything is the higher costs are around to stay. So just as long as we're paying attention to it, and you can update the board on that, I mean, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you're right, Dan. We looked at fuel gallon assumptions at 275 during the budget process, and I mean, even those expenses have risen above 275 now. So it's something really to watch. Anything else on the general fund? Okay. Move on to the combined water and wastewater fund. There's one of the successful projects we completed over the summer with the slip lining of the sewer. The financial performance of the water and sewer fund was pretty good in 2021. When we started this fiscal year, we started with about 1.6 million more than what was budgeted, primarily because of projects that weren't completed in that year. On the revenue side, we finished with about $100,000, about $150,000 more than what was budgeted, had better water and wastewater sales than anticipated. On the expenditure side, there were projects, decisions about projects to forego that saved us on the expenditure side. We had savings in electricity and other areas and commodities. It saved us about 2.2 million, the budget compared to what we actually spent. When we ended this year, that savings and that beginning cash balance difference helped us really exceed our ending balance, actual versus budget. But again, this fund is going to continue to support major expansion infrastructure projects in the future. So that money is definitely going to be spent come soon. When we looked at the forecast and developing the budget, we had budgeted to start the year with 4.6, and because of those savings and expenditures and a little bit better revenues, we're going to start with 5.5, and we'll anticipate finishing with about 800,000 better than what was budgeted. do have some considerations for the board with this fund. One of the objectives that we want to look at in 2022 is to do a utility rate study and update the work that Raffatellis did for the city, looking at all the rate structures for our volumetric and fixed charges and our utilities. We also want to use our ARPA stimulus money that's already been slated for use on the raw water pump station. I also want to continue to work with Mark and Clay County on finding funding beyond just looking to fund the raw water pump station, but other infrastructure projects. And also looking at issuing a COP for the West Bypass project in 2023. Any comments on those considerations before I move on?
I'd like to thank Chuck for his hard work so far with the stuff we have worked with Mark on. It's not easy. We weren't part of those conversations a few years ago. And then Clay County, we had a really good meeting with the interim administrator and one of our commissioners, and those conversations continue. So this isn't just throwing that against the wall and saying, "Oh, hope Clay County will help us with this." We're having real conversations, and we submitted some costs to them. Because as all of you know, when you drive through those toll gates at the lake, we're not collecting that revenue. The county is. Zebra mussels could have been possibly prevented if they were checking those things. We really want to make sure we reach out to them and encourage them to help pay some of these expenses.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on here. Just looking real quick at the revenues on the water and wastewater fund, you can see water and wastewater sales exceeded budget, while some of the impact fees fell just a little bit short. On the expense side, really had the savings in the capital improvement projects with the decisions that were made this year, and savings in some water impact projects. I'll move on here and cover our special half-cent sales taxes. These sales taxes helped fund the new downtown streetscape project, and there's the new mill and overlay work that was performed. Starting with the transportation sales tax fund, this fund's in really good shape. We started the year about $315,000 more than what was budgeted. As we moved through the year, we had good sales tax performance, and we finished about $56,000 higher than the budget. On the expenditure side, we did have an overage from the original budget, but you see there in the second bullet, the board approved some budget amendments for the streetscape project, and we spent some of those funds, as well as the street maintenance mill and overlay program. We finished the year about $165,000 over the original budget. When we move into this fiscal year, we forecasted and budgeted to start with 425, and we start a little bit higher with 455. So we'll have sufficient funds in there, like the mayor said, to help pay for project overages when they come up and potential change orders due to increased prices when we get there into those projects and find out more. So transportation sales tax has steadily grown over the last 3 years. We've seen consistent growth, and we've seen that actual number hit the budget mark each year. Looking at the capital sales tax, capital improvement sales tax fund, we started the fiscal year 21 budget year with more than what we had budgeted, really because of unfinished projects, continuing to get those done in this fiscal year. You can see we overspent the budget, but again, did a budget amendment for Streetscape East that was authorized by the board. We had really good sales tax performance here. We had budgeted 530 and actually had received 659. So we ended this year much better than what we had budgeted. When we head into this fiscal year, our forecast, that final year sales tax, final month, it performed real well. And that allowed us to project about 43,000 higher to end this year than what we had budgeted. So continue to look at that and watch the performance on it. The capital improvement sales tax has continued to grow year over year as well. And we've seen good consistent growth with that, especially in the businesses coming into the marketplace, helping fuel that sales tax. Finally, the Park and Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. This was the inaugural year for this fund and this sales tax. The budget was a little bit lower for this sales tax. With that in mind, being the first year, we budgeted 442. We brought in 614. And because of that increased revenue, we finished much higher than what we had budgeted, over 220,000 higher. And coming down the stretch, our forecast versus the budget, we started this fiscal year higher than what was budgeted. So we're off to a good start, being about 96,000 higher on our end of year projection. Any questions from the board on those half-cent sales taxes?
Hey, Steve, I know we had discussed it originally with the Parks and Stormwater Sales Tax, but are we putting part of that into a capital project fund on the unbudgeted number? So that when we have those big ticket items in a few years, we have that money set aside for those?
We can look at doing that. Right now, just all the sales tax that's collected is going right into this fund. Is that what you mean? Like splitting some of it up?
Well, yeah, when we did the Parks Master Plan, we have some of those bigger multi-million-dollar items that we had talked about.
Yes.
Are we going to actually separate that into a separate fund, or is it just going to sit in this fund until we need to spend it?
The plan was to just sit in the fund, but update the board every year during the budget process on kind of the cash flow and what it would look like in the next 5 years.
Yeah, so just remember that when we look at that ending cash balance, a lot of that is what we'll spend in the future on those bigger projects.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We had a slide during the budget process that showed an intentional earmarking of money and building it up over time to pay for one of the big park projects. Yeah. Yep, that's part of the strategy. Okay.
Yeah, and that 96,000 extra is not just, hey, let's go spend it on parks because we brought it in. It'll go towards those types of projects.
Right.
But also, as we look at grant opportunities, I think that's a good number to look at too. Hey, we have that number there. If there's something that's grant eligible, we need to make sure we look at that number closely. As Chuck knows, we can't always budget future grants. Sometimes Mark just contacts you and lets you know they're
there. Move on here and look at the capital project fund and finish with the rest of the internal service funds. And there's the work that was done this summer on the new basketball court in downtown Smithville. We'll look here at the capital projects fund. This fund is really set up to help pay for projects that receive general obligation revenues and general obligation debt revenues. The major project that we finished in 2021 in this fund was the Main Street Trail. And so when you look at the beginning cash balance, we budgeted a much lower balance than what we started with because we hadn't spent all those funds. So we spent those funds this year, did budget amendments that were authorized by the board, and we also received the DNR 20% match in the revenue column. We finished this year with a little bit left in the fund there. And when we look ahead to this year, we have a little bit more to spend. We have a remaining chunk that we'll spend there, about 127 on streetscape. And after that, this fund will just hold the fees for payments in lieu of dedication of park space. So we can use that fee money to pay for future park projects, to the mayor's point. So we're just about done with the streetscape there. And once we finish that off, we'll just have that fee in this fund. The debt service fund really operates pretty seamlessly. The money's in and money's out according to the debt service schedule. and the transfer in from the capital improvement sales tax fund. So there's no surprises here. We really start and end as planned.
You pay the bill a few days early. Is that why we got $5 extra on that one?
I think it really just comes down to rounding. Yeah. Yeah, we save $5, right? The Sanitation Fund, it's a very similar in and out fund with a little bit of variation in ending and beginning cash balances. We started this year with 55,000, a little bit higher than what was budgeted. But again, the success was in the revenue versus expenditure. We just added a little bit to fund balance to give a little bit of flexibility there. We ended this year with about 62,000. Our budget for fiscal year 22, we thought we'd start with about 58. We're going to start with 62, so it just puts us about $4,600 ahead for this year. We have our new lower rate and our senior discount rate. This is the first month, first billing cycle for those rates, and we've had a lot of senior discounts added, and I hope people have received that well. Our last fund for the review for the evening here is the Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund. This was an internal service fund that we added in fiscal year 21 to help us equip to account for the enterprise fleet management program and leasing vehicles with enterprise. So we didn't have any funds in this fund when we started the year. We transferred some money in from the general fund and also sold vehicles, in-house vehicles, to earn about 91,000 in this fund. We expended about 66, which is lower than the budget. Not all the vehicles have arrived with a lot of the demand and supply shortages in the automotive industry. It's been a little bit more challenging getting those vehicles. We budgeted to start this year with about 26,000. We'll actually start with just about $450 less, so we're pretty on target. And really in 2022, we're really hopeful and looking for the opportunity for the automotive industry to swing around and start getting more vehicles in from enterprise, sell our in-house fleet, and really improve our fleet and have improved vehicles to provide good service in our city. So we'll closely track the VERF here as we hopefully see that supply increase with vehicles and get more from enterprise. Just to kind of wrap up tonight's presentation, the finance office has made some really tremendous improvements in budget reporting as displayed here through these year-end budget accomplishments. We brought the board an improved budget document with fund summaries and department pages. We've improved our 5-year CIP. And I want to thank Myra and Gina for helping out on this and working with all the supervisors and directors to get justification on projects and get pages ready. Myra's been tremendous in drafting a popular annual financial report, which kind of takes all the CAFR and all the budget book information and compacts it into like a 13 to 15 page report that you can all look at and easily consume. And we're getting ready to roll that out. And then we have some better, what I hope is better quarterly budget updates to each of you to give you the information you need to make decisions and hopefully just make things easier to understand. So been a pleasure to present to you tonight. Any other questions that you have?
Stephen, I just want to commend you and your department. I didn't have anything to gauge by, obviously, because I'm fairly new this year, but working with you since I've been, sworn in has just been wonderful, and you're doing a great job. So thank you for all your hard work. You've turned rather dry material into digestible material. So thank you.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
And you survived your first year.
That's always good.
And you have a full team right now, so good job.
Good job. Thank you.
All right, next, anybody else have anything for the budget? All right, moving on to the discussion of Courtyard Alley RFP draft. Is this going to be you, Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, thank you. So earlier this year, staff received some communication as far as the piece of land that is directly next to Humphreys Bar and Grill. At a May 4th work session, the board directed staff to research options. And then on September 16th, staff came forward with 3 separate options that we could do with that parcel of land. Our 3 options were lease, sell, or do nothing at all. The board came back with a decision to sell the land. And so what is before you now is an RFP for the sale of that piece of land. What staff is looking for right now is any direction as far as changes that you might want to see prior to posting this. Currently, the RFP has a posting date of December 9th, which is Wednesday or Thursday, and a closing day or ending middle day of January 3rd. From there will be a 30-day timeline as far as negotiations and getting contracts around. The RFP has been seen by our legal staff, and they have given their seal of approval. So any changes that you'd like to see, I'd love to discuss anything along those lines. So I'll open the floor.
I'll just go around the Hollywood squares here. Dan Hartman, you're at the top. So anything from you?
No, as I review it, I think it's put together well. It'll be interesting to see, the developers' presentations. And I guess, quick question, once it goes to you, Anna, can you just describe kind of high level what the next steps are after that?
Once we receive proposals for the RFP, yeah, so we will, as staff, look at all the proposals submitted. And this RFP is based on the highest proposal as far as value of the land. So this is not necessarily a development. This is strictly the sale of that piece of land. So we won't necessarily receive potential projects along with it. It may accompany it, but the main portion of information that we're asking for is an offer. So from there, we would talk with our legal staff, get contracts drawn up, and then the board would then approve that as well.
Alderman John Chevalier.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I mentioned this last time, but I'm still not really in favor of selling the land. I think of this particular section, I just feel it's too close to the stage, and I don't want to lose control over that. So, I mean, that's about all I have to offer.
Alderman Steve Sarver.
I think that it covers everything we talked about.
Alderman Marv Atkins.
Yeah, we've already reviewed about selling it. I agree with John that I hate to see the access to the stage gone, but we have another side, as long as we protect the other side for easy access. The sale of the land is different than property development, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and specifically to the RFP language, that's what we really need to get the feedback on. Alderman Daniel Liddell. Anything to add or remove from the RFP?
No, no, nothing to change.
Thank you. And Alderman Kelly Kabilski.
No, I agree with the document that was put out, and I'm excited to see what potentially may come.
Okay. Ms. Mitchell, is that all you need? Okie dokie.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, we thought Stephen's presentation was going to take a lot longer, and we're we're going to be on the same Zoom. You get a longer break. I think it's just because Cynthia's missing that we get to take a little longer break this time. I will let everyone know before we do adjourn. Linda and I worked today with with 3 chefs in town. We will be hosting the MML dinner in January. You are all invited. I think some of you have attended these dinners before. I know some of you attended the one at Kozak's when it was here. Not a lot of times outside of town. I know Dan Uladal's been to at least one. Kelly and Dan Hartman have been to a couple. It will be on January 27th at White Iron Ridge. We have a menu put together from Chops, Kozak's, and Aroma Bistro. Brisket, shrimp, cornbread, salad, sampling of desserts, ceviche. I think it's going to be a good representation of the cuisine here in Smithville, and it'll be at a beautiful venue. So hopefully you can all make it. Yes, Alderman Atkins.
I had it down as Park and Rec's meeting that night too.
Yeah, we won't have that Parks and Rec meeting.
Okay, works for me.
Let's dine on some food and show off our town to the. So for those of you not familiar with the MML dinners, Westgate is the Mid-America Regional Council of Counties in Missouri. So it's Clay, Cass, Jackson, and Platte. Usually we get a pretty decent attendance at those. And I really want to show off our city to those folks and the things that we've done in the past few years. So hope you all can make it. And yeah, Linda and I had a good conversation today about food with the chefs, and it was great. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Alderman Hartman, sorry.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn our work session.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
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 All opposed say no. All right, we stand adjourned. We will be back on this Zoom at 7 o'clock. We can't start our other meeting because we do have a public hearing. We got to give those folks time to join. So thank you all.